Hello and welcome into the latest edition of PL Express. Kay Murray and Janusz Michallik with you as always. What a weekend it has been, getting underway very early on Friday with that 3-3 draw between Arsenal and Southampton. I mean, we ask ourselves now, Janusz, what now? And I ask you what now, because you'll never be drawn. You've never once said that Arsenal will win the title this season. And I want you to explain why.
Well, I mean, I was doing this out of respect. I mean, you've told me already here and privately that, to get off the fence. And so did Rob, our producer, as well. I mean, the meme that he sent was pretty funny, I have to admit. Yeah, to a degree, you're sitting on the fence out of respect to a tremendous season that Arsenal has had, right? I mean, none of us expected it. They probably didn't expect it. And, with the leads they had in Manchester City, maybe not at their best in this convoluted season that really didn't give you much. I'm talking about the World Cup, of course. So I give it out of respect, but I think I always felt that Manchester City are a much better team, much more talented, much deeper. And I felt that they're going to go on that run that we're seeing right now, which they haven't. In the past, they have done it either early in the season, in the middle of the season. In fact, Manchester City used to have these great runs against Liverpool, 2 or 3 times during the season. So, but ultimately, I think I always knew that this is a little bit too early for Arsenal, and certainly signs have been there. Last 3 games, but not just 3 games. The makeup of that team is nowhere near the one of Manchester City, and certainly this is not a complete team by any means.
So what completes them?
Well, I mean, where do we start? I mean, a leadership in the center of the pitch. We've seen, I mean, this is an Arsenal team that wants to play their way, the Arsenal way, at least the one that we've been accustomed to under Arsene Wenger. And they play some tremendous football going forward. They take a lot of risks. They go forward. They score plenty of goals. They entertain us in a tremendous way. I look forward to watch Arsenal play football, but in transition as we've seen it. I mean, I think Arsenal conceded 3rd highest goals at home. I mean, look at some of the games. If you look all the way back to 3-2 against United, 3-2 against Bournemouth at home, lost to City 3-1, this Southampton 3-3, and probably a couple others that I can't remember at the time. There's a reason for that. They're excited. They see the end of the line. They want to show their fans how well they play, but they missed a leader in the center of the pitch. And that's why, jumping ahead, I thought I was going to kind of weave this through a little bit differently, but there isn't one there. No matter what you say, Odegaard is not the type. Zinchenko is a little bit of a wannabe, right? I mean, he was just one of the few at Manchester City. And here we saw that, after conceding a goal, a huddle. And this is great. I think every
What does that mean? What does a wannabe mean? Zinchenko's a wannabe.
Well, I just don't think that he carries himself in such way that everybody will just say, wow, right? I mean, he's no Rodri. I think we'll find that out on Wednesday. He's no Casemiro, probably a few others. Look, if I were Arsenal, I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 or 4 holes that they need to fill. But if I were Arsenal, I would spend any sort of money. And I wouldn't say that maybe a few months ago on Declan Rice. I mean, there's zero question for me. Not only is he a great captain at West Ham, he is exactly what they need. A number 6 that holds, number 6 that protects, number 6 that anticipates, number 6 that distributes the ball extremely well. And hey, all of a sudden, by the way, he's scoring goals, right? Because that was one of the knocks I heard Graham Souness and many others talking about. I'm not saying that he's wrong, but I mean, his primary function is to make sure that on an attacking team like Arsenal are and want to be, and fair play to them, you kill the transition, right? You protect. And I would spend well over 100 million on Declan Rice. He knows the league. He's English. He understands the mentality of this league. And he would be, for me, perfect player. I wouldn't look for anybody else. Yes, there's Caicedo, right? I mean, there's talk about Caicedo and Declan Rice for many teams because they're good players, but they still don't have the function of what Declan Rice does. And this is the biggest problem that Arsenal have.
If they had Declan Rice this season, would you be off that fence?
I would be probably, yes. I don't think that we'd be seeing Arsenal conceding that many goals. I mean, a lot of them are mistakes. I mean, the Southampton one, I don't know if it's Declan Rice or not. I mean, if you have run, a minute in, you concede a goal like this in terms of distribution and all that. But I would feel much more comfortable. And I think out of the last 3 games, I don't think they're losing so many points for sure. It still doesn't mean that at this stage, Arsenal would have won it, because I still think Manchester City is far and above everybody. It's not even close. The table tells you otherwise, but I think everybody that understands football would understand that City are far superior.
Well, we'll find out what things are looking like and how the landscape looks after Wednesday's game.
Well,
I don't want to know if
just to finish that, Kate, just to finish that. My apology. Just to finish that, I mean, such a critical part of the midfield. And look, Thomas Partey's been good, but you know him well, and I know him well for La Liga. He's not a true leader. And also, he wants to go forward. He's not a true 6, right? Xhaka, in terms of leadership, maybe, but I mean, maybe it was proven that he's better when he doesn't have that responsibility of a captain, right? Remember Xhaka just a few years ago. I mean, he struggled with that responsibility. He wasn't there yesterday. That was a big loss because Vieira couldn't do it, right? Odegaard is not that. So I wanted to mention Thomas Partey because, he's had a good season. Even yesterday, he wasn't bad. He wasn't the worst of them all, but he's not the profile of a player. And to finish that, look at Manchester City, look at Rodri, but look at also Stones in terms of transition, in terms of a team that's very much like Arsenal, that wants to attack time and time again. You have 2 6s and 2 10s really, who really clog that midfield, and it's very, very hard to get through Manchester City. So that's just a preview of Wednesday, and that's going to be the battle. That's going to be the one that I'm going to watch, and that's going to be the one that I'm afraid is going to confirm my thesis. If not, fair play to Arsenal.
Okay, so you've obviously said what you think. You think that City are going to go on and win this, but rather than me pushing you on that, I want to ask you if you think those Arsenal players actually believe they can go and win it on Wednesday.
Not as much now. No questions about that. I mean, they would understand the points they've dropped. I mean, think about it. I mean, the only thing that, I suppose that, they have is that, I mean, this could have been a loss, and we're not even talking about anything here. It doesn't really matter what happens Wednesday. I mean, really, I mean, it wouldn't have, right? Because they would have lost 2 additional points. So that comeback gives you something, gives you that fight, gives you that little bit of a character that I think Mikel Arteta is going to talk about. And I think if you're a player, you say, yeah, it's going to be so difficult, but look at us towards the end, right? I mean, 90th minute equalizer, there was 8 or 9 minutes. Remember, right at the end there was a, possibility, a chance, couple of shots blocked. So I suppose Arsenal, in terms of going forward and in terms of attack, will think to themselves, look, we've got absolutely 0 to lose. It's not, we understand that Manchester City are not going to let that slip away, but let's go to Manchester and let's win that games. With, the funny thing is, with pressure off. I mean, the pressure, in a sense, is off of Arsenal. So if they go there and win it, and again, one of few teams that are capable of doing that. Because remember, Manchester City, one of the ways of beating Manchester City is to attack them relentlessly. So, I mean, it's not possible, but highly unlikely in my book.
Why is the pressure off them when they've still a chance to win the league, especially by winning this game?
Because they can't calculate. They know. You've asked me the question that you just asked me. Do these players believe? I think players will always believe, but they know that it's unlikely, right? I mean, they know that they've let it slip away. They've had all this lead throughout the season. Everybody was kind of thinking that this is a possibility. I mean, last 3 games, you're dropping so many points. You're conceding goals. You don't have Saliba, and they will, as we found out this morning, he will not be available there. So there's a question mark against all that power, Haaland, against all that speed, against all those Manchester City players that are on the highest of highs right now. I think these Arsenal players, deep down, there's that one little voice in the back that says, we've let that slip.
Or there could be that one little voice in the back going, wow, we've had a bit of a tough run and we're still not out.
Well,
This
that's
is
what I
our
just said to you,
chance.
right? Well, that's what I said to you. I mean, they have no, the pressure is off. I mean, to a large degree, that pressure of being first and letting points slip. Now you're kind of saying, let's have a go. Nobody believes in us, right? I think we all know that we've given Manchester City an unbelievable in. I mean, and on top of that, Manchester City has beaten them twice right now, and in this form ahead of Real Madrid, where they feel so good when they really want that confidence. Manchester City going into this massive game against Real Madrid, I just think that City are going to come out flying.
Stevie Nicol said this week that Arsenal can win this game, but he still doesn't think they'll go on to win the title. If they win this game, can you see why he would even say that?
I can. Yeah, I just think that Manchester City just know it. I mean, they've done it. They've done it over and over and over again. See, part of the narrative, and this is what, because you say, okay, you've had this lead. If you're Arsenal, you're top of the table, you let that slip. Yeah, of course. I mean, but before the season, we thought this was going to be another epic battle between Manchester City and Liverpool. And Liverpool fell apart, and out of nowhere came Arsenal, right? Without experience, way ahead of plan. And you talking about Manchester City, who, I mean, look at that Liverpool team that lost by 1 point. Was it 98, 97 points? I mean, look at that. And they came up short. And you tell me on the back of these last three games, Arsenal are going to be able to see that through now until the end? I doubt it. I tend to think that I understand what Stephen Nichols is thinking. I just think that there's more points dropped. Look, I mean, I remember when you laughed, there's Chelsea coming up. What is it? There's Newcastle coming up. I just think that you're going to see Arsenal dropping points more and more.
Yeah, but we also did see them lose to City before and then go on that winning run. So we know that they're capable of an unbeaten run too.
Yeah, there is, but again, I mean, they have to come and win here, and if they lose to City again, it won't matter what kind of run they're going to be on.
All right, so another one of Stevie's concerns, and it's something you've mentioned, is Arsenal's defence. That's what he feels is going to be the problem for them, even if they were to win at the Etihad on Wednesday. When Arsenal first lost Saliba, I asked you if it was a big miss, and I feel as though with each game that passes now, it's becoming more and more apparent, and we're hearing his name more and what could have changed. How big a miss is he to this Arsenal side in this title race?
Yeah, it is, and you're right. With each game, it's gotten worse and worse. Because I remember the very first game. I can't remember who was the first game that they dropped points. May have been against Liverpool. I don't know. I mean, Rob Holding, held up pretty well. But with every game, there's some mistakes. It's not just him. You saw Gabriel being played behind. That ball through, wonderful outside the foot assist. But I think if Saliba is there, I think he covers differently. He's got the pace to recover. I think Zinchenko's been, didn't play in the last game against West Ham. In this game, made a couple of big mistakes. I think, well, at the very least, the one on the third goal as well. So you have to say that I think with Saliba, things would look differently, but that's part of the parcel, right? I mean, that's still a defense that doesn't give you the confidence of a top team. Even somebody, I mean, just look at it. I mean, Zinchenko coming in was a big, was big for them. I think he's contributed tremendously in that role that he comes into the midfield and becomes a little bit of a playmaker as well. But, Ben White has been tremendous, you want to say, but is he truly a right fullback, the one that you want? So shorter answer, I suppose, with Saliba, I think some of these goals could have been prevented.
If Arsenal don't win the title this season, what happens to them next season?
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, that's that missed opportunity. Even if we make every excuse in the book, ahead of plan and still a tremendous season, which it will be, a primary target achieved because Arsenal will be in the Champions League. But there's always that feeling of an opportunity lost, right? Because Premier League so competitive. The top guns. I mean, look at Manchester City. We thought that maybe it's their off season. I mean, it's incredible. Again, they will reload once again, even if they lose Gundogan and possibly Bernardo Silva. I remember just a couple of years ago we were saying, "Oh my God, David Silva is leaving. How are they going to replace him? Who's going to be playing between the lines?" Well, that doesn't seem to be a problem. In comes Haaland, in comes Grealish. They're going to do this again. It's going to be maybe Jude Bellingham or somebody else, 2 or 3 players that are going to change that lineup in a way. I think that this is going to be felt somewhere as an opportunity lost. However unrealistic or however realistic, if you look at the season, I think Arsenal is going to be fighting for top 4. I'm not saying they're going to be outside of it, but it's not going to be like it is today. It's not going to be that, for a while now they knew that they were not going to be outside of top 4. I think this is going to be a massive fight again. So I think somewhere in the back of their heads, at least fans will look at it and says, wow, remember that 22-23? What an opportunity. Top of the league with good advantage for 3/4 or even longer of the league, and we let it slip.
Oh, they might say we never expected to be there. Isn't it amazing that we were, if you were to look at it that way?
I mean, Leicester is not a good comparison to Arsenal because Arsenal are 3 times as good. And, the seasons, although similar in a way that some of the top teams were off when Leicester were winning, just like it is now Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United to the degree, but Arsenal are quite a different team. But yeah, you think of that. You have to think of that time that Leicester won it, right? Here you have Arsenal in a league where 2 or 3 top teams were nowhere near their best. You had that opportunity and you had just one team to beat. So you have to think of it in years to come as an opportunity loss, if in fact it happens, by the way.
If in fact it happens, because obviously they are 5 points clear. City have 2 games in hand, games they have to win. So we can't just assume that those are won yet. It is a 5-point advantage as it stands right now.
And okay, I picked it, but you can understand and you have to respect that and you have to say that. Right. I mean, it's easy to say, even 3 months ago for me, when Manchester City weren't at their best, what a genius this Janusz is. If I say Manchester City, it's a 50-50 call. But you have to respect that because Arsenal are 5 points ahead and crazier things have happened. And again, if there's a team that can beat Manchester City, because they're not just going to sit back and hope for the best, that are going to actually create problems for Manchester City, is Arsenal. So you still, there's that 1% where you can logically say, it is impossible for Arsenal to win it. I mean, they're top of the league. But yes, I'm not backtracking, by the way, Kay. As I, had that feeling throughout the season that Manchester City are going to win it, and I don't see Manchester City letting that slip.
Yeah, as Janusz mentioned the Arsenal meme that our producer sent us, it was a fence finally being broken and people running through it. And that was Janusz.
And I don't feel that way.
Sat on the fence. But listen, so let's focus on the City side of things then, because obviously they're looking like they do. They're into the final of the FA Cup. They've got Real Madrid coming up in the Champions League semi-finals. They've got other things to be thinking about too, Janusz.
Well, they do, but I think, if you're in such form, you almost feel invincible. I think it's appropriate to mention that word since we're talking about Arsenal and Manchester City. And yeah, I mean, a loss at this part of the season in any competition can have a massive effect on it, right? I think in a way, it's for Manchester City, it's actually good that they're playing Arsenal ahead of Real Madrid, right? Because Real Madrid, obviously, with their might and their pedigree in the Champions League, I mean, if Manchester City loses to them, at least one leg, and that game against Arsenal is played differently, I could see how psychologically that could have a massive effect on Manchester City. Because without knowing, I do feel that more so than any other time, this is the year where Manchester City truly won the Champions League, and this is their priority without saying so, right? This is the time right now. The way they've been playing is incredible. They're hitting form just at the right time. They're as healthy as one can be. I can, Foden is back. I can't remember who's injured, but probably, nobody significant right now. So a loss can always have an effect, especially in the run-in right now, where you're fighting for 3 trophies and you think to yourself, you can get them all.
Yeah, so obviously with that game, Manchester City come into it as big favourites. We know the history between these two sides, even at this stage of the competition. Look at last season. Why is it the year for Manchester City? Why are the bookies favouring them so like they are?
Because, and I don't want to see that this team is more complete than some of the previous ones, because that's probably not true, right? I mean, there are other years where Manchester City could have done that, but I just think it's Pep Guardiola. It's simplicity now. In the past we had a chance, or he gave us a chance to perhaps question some of his decisions. I think that the team took it out of his hands because the lineup picks itself. I think he's finally found a formula with the 2 6s and the 2 10s. John Stones, incredible, right? I mean, he's done that in the past pretty well with Kyle Walker, but I think we can all say that John Stones is the more intelligent player in that position, right? Understands the game much better than Kyle Walker, maybe lacks his pace, but when you come inside, you perhaps don't need it. I think John Stones has proven that he can actually play in the right back position, where he's often played outright in the back four. And now when he fills in, when City doesn't have the ball, he drops in that position. He can play that because he's a very good defender one-on-one. Obviously the plan B or C or whatever you want to call it with Erling Haaland, he can change things around. But it's an easy pick for him. The Bernardo Silva, not necessarily what he does going forward, which is wonderful, but finally found a formula because of the opponents, right? I mean, remember, he's played as a holding, as a 6 on the side of Rodri. He's done okay. At times, complicating things. Remember, that's Pep when he put him at left back. That didn't work well. Now, puts him where Riyad Mahrez normally plays, and Riyad Mahrez has been tremendous. We just saw that against Sheffield United, but against Bayern Munich, and you look at Leroy Sané, and you look at Alphonso Davies for his defensive abilities. This is how good he is, and I suspect that going against Saka, it's possible. Although because he has to negotiate Champions League, he will probably be thinking Bernardo Silva. Yes, against this guy Camavinga, who just had an incredible game in La Liga, and of course Vinny Jr. Because Bernardo Silva is going to have to help Akanji or whoever is going to play there. So I think he's found the formula. He knows how to play against different teams, different systems, different opponents, using the likes of Mahrez and Bernardo Silva and John Stones to a great degree.
All right, so it's another competition that they're in the final of is the FA Cup, as I mentioned, and that will be to face Manchester United, because Manchester United beat Brighton on penalties in their semi-final over the weekend at Wembley. It's a little too far away to preview that game right now, but what are your thoughts on Manchester United and the resilience they showed this weekend after what we'd seen against Sevilla in Europe?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess, after, they had to bounce, after Liverpool game, they did it using Betis, if I remember correctly. This time they lost to Sevilla and they had to bounce here. So, obviously, missing a lot of the players. So you look at Varane and Lisandro Martinez, that in itself is a problem. Maguire was suspended. Some will say that may have been a good thing ahead of the game. I again, like to respect players. As much as I don't think he's a Manchester United top player or a top shelf player, I feel for him as a former player. It can be an easy time for him, but he knows that Luke Shaw can play. Every time he puts Luke Shaw in that position, he deputizes extremely well. Bruno Fernandes, again, was pretty good, had a number of chances. I don't think it was outstanding, but it's clear to say that Manchester United, without Bruno Fernandes, doesn't function properly. So, I mean, look, it wasn't an easy game. I like Brighton in that game more than I like Manchester United, although it was a back and forth, and I think they were kind of exchanging blows in terms of control of the game, but it's an important one. It's an important one in terms of building under Ten Hag. He's got one cup under his belt. He's got an opportunity in a game of games, right? I mean, first time ever that we're going to see Manchester City or Manchester Derby in the FA Cup final. And we'll see where City are. If they're in Champions League final, I believe FA Cup is just a week ahead of that. So that's going to be another job, at least for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City to juggle these two competitions.
So my penultimate question then, given that we know or we've seen that Manchester United have beaten Manchester City and know how to do that, there was a question on the ESPN FC show last night as to which side you'd rather be on this season. Arsenal pushing for a title win and going toe-to-toe with Manchester City, or Manchester United to have the chance of a double here?
Can you just ask an easy question?
No.
Chance, because again,
we only give you what you can handle, Janusz.
No, I can handle it all. You know, and at first I was thinking, you know, given where Manchester United were, you know, ahead of this season, right? My goodness, I mean, they got to be happy with, you know, with the League Cup and this. But I still think, you know, so you want me to compare Manchester United and Arsenal, where Manchester United would want to be.
You're a former professional, Janusz. You get the chance to relive a season. Which team would you want to be on? You have to decide right now whether you'd rather be on this Manchester United team this season or the Arsenal team.
I think I would want to be on the Arsenal team. And I think if you ask Manchester United fans and players, they would say the same, because this is Manchester United. Nobody has won more titles in England, you know, in the Premier League, in the former in the top division than Manchester United. And for Manchester United to see Manchester City for the last decade owning that city can be good. So I think both sides would rather be this late in the season at the top of the Premier League fighting for that than, you know, the FA Cup or the League Cup.
Oh, even with the League Cup already under your belt, so at least you know you have won some silverware this season.
We're talking about Manchester United here,
right?
I mean, I would have to say that I'd be shocked or very, very surprised if the answer from Manchester United fans and players was different.
Okay, I said penultimate question because the last question is who's going to win the league title?
Manchester City. Yeah, I told you that last week. You have to read between the lines. Just joking. I've given you plenty of ammunition to have a go at me, but
I know.
Don't worry. I feel
worry.
Comfortable with myself.
I've still got a lot of ammunition in that bag ready for you next week as well.
What's going to happen if Arsenal beat Manchester City?
There'll be many a question then. Listen, guys, thank you so much for sending in your questions today. We always encourage you to send in the questions about the topics that we tell you that we are talking about on the show, and then we'll do our best job to answer them. But we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.